Hi there, Laura here, and today I'm going to talk about my grief experience about 2 months after my dad passed. It's actually a little more than that, maybe an extra week. And I will also be sharing my tip with you as well. But if you have not met me, my name is Laura Smothers-Chu, and I am the CEO and founder of Befriended Heart, where I help long distance daughters navigate their parents' dementia. My dad had dementia for about 7 years, and I was long distance for a majority of that time. So I lived about 3.5 hours away from my parents. And it's funny because now with the coronavirus, I am still long distance from my mom. So while she lives about 15 minutes away, which is great, I am also trying to stay home as much as possible. And her building is also pretty strict as an independent living building where she needs to get permission ahead of time to leave, and they have to check her temperature when she comes back. So it's pretty strict. And I think that you all might be going through the same thing. So it's funny because I had recorded a video for you guys about a week before this, and I needed to re-record it because last week I was feeling like the overall sadness had pretty much passed, and that I was starting to feel like my dad was present with me on pretty much a daily basis, especially if I was doing activities that were similar to what he would do when I was a kid, like making binders and taping things in binders, which I'll talk about in a future video. But I do feel his presence. And then my husband actually ended up getting symptoms that were similar to coronavirus, and I started getting symptoms as well. And so it really made me assess my life and really appreciate my husband and worry that he was going to pass away. And so this fear of abandonment came up in me, and it reminded me of how I felt when my dad passed away. I shared in an earlier video that I felt abandoned. And so that fear came up for me again, and I was in a pretty bad mood for about 2 or 3 days, especially because this is around Easter time. And so I come from a Christian faith, a pretty liberal Christian faith, but I also combine that Christian faith with basically living my life as a Buddhist does, as far as meditating and doing mindful activities. I try to do it each day. So I sort of meld the Christianity and the Buddhism together. And anyway, so I do still celebrate Easter and Good Friday and all of those things. And this was the first year where Good Friday, and if you're not Christian, it's where, Jesus got crucified. And it's probably one of the hardest concepts to fathom in the Bible. It's also the most heartbreaking. And I finally felt like I understood the grief and the shock that someone would, have to go through all of that suffering. And, it's also timed, as I'm sure you guys are noticing, with coronavirus. And so I'm sure you all are seeing that there are so many people that are affected by this virus and passing away all over the world that it's really pulling at my heartstrings. And I know that because you watch this channel that you are going through the same thing. And then not only that, but then for you to have the, despair of dementia and not being able to visit your parents when you know that your parent might be progressing, my heart really goes out to you. And I think the really important thing to remember during this time, because I know that of course, especially with Easter, and if you're watching this at a different time, any holiday, that's really when we really want to be with our parents, regardless of how old we are. And so it's really hard this year. And I would encourage you that even though we can't be with our parents in person, unfortunately, and we're not sure how long that's going to last, there are still ways that you can reach out to them. And it's really going to depend what stage of dementia your forgetful parent is in, and whether or not they live with, a caregiver, whether that's your other parent or a caregiver who comes in. But either way, you may want to look into options like, of course, calling on the phone, the classic, or video chats. And I know too that it just depends. You know, my dad didn't have many words. He lost his ability to speak early on into his diagnosis. And so I remember it was pretty difficult talking with him on the phone. And so I would kind of talk with my mom and she would relay information. Or I would just, my dad would pick up the phone and I would just tell him a story about what happened that day, because I noticed that he felt pressure when I wasn't talking because he thought that he needed to talk and it just caused him some stress. So if you want to just call up your parents and tell them a story of what happened, you know, for Easter today, I think they would really appreciate it. And as far as video call, again, it depends on what stage of dementia your forgetful parent is in, and if there's a caregiving parent that can kind of relay the information or see how your forgetful parent is handling the video call, whether they're getting stressed out or not. That's really important. But I know there's several different platforms for video calling at this point. And so in my next interview, I will be interviewing Wesley Cheng, who is a technology guru, and he will be talking about the different video platforms and what might be better for elders and elders who have dementia. So I know for me personally, I tried video chat recently with my mom for the first time. And while she was a little bit frustrated in how it was going to work, she loved seeing my face. And I was able to show her my cat and my dog, and she showed me her cat. And it was just so lovely to be able to connect with her that way. Another way you could do it is if phone calls or video chat is off the table, you could send a greeting card. You know, I know that my dad would constantly unpin the cards in his room in the memory care place where he lived, and he would just read them over and over again. And so if you can send a card or a letter, I think they would really appreciate that as well. And finally, the last thing is, I know that it can be kind of risky, especially with coronavirus right now, but you may think about sending your parents a care package of a lot of things that they like to eat, or activities they like to do, or something like that. I mean, anything coming from you will be meaningful for them. And if you are out of ideas as far as what to send in a care package, my friend, Michelle Darwin, who has a foundation called the Windward Foundation, she is actually sending care packages to caregivers. And so she sent one to my mom, and my mom loved it. It was a lot of, items that were smelled good and helped her, self-care type items, even though I hate that term, but you know what I mean. And so she really appreciated it. And so if you are interested in getting a care package for your caregiving parent, I will include a link in the description below. And all you have to do is click the link, fill out a super quick form, submit it, and the Windward Foundation will get in touch with you. So I hope you take advantage of that. While we can't be with our parents physically, I think they would love to hear from you any other way. So I will see you next time, and don't miss my next video, my interview. Bye.